Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe
Good time of day. This is Americans Watching the Footy. Welcome to episode number 160, our round 5 preview. It's another 8-game week now that everyone's back home from the gather round. There's one. Yeah, we're probably not going to get to say it that many times, so, we're leaving the gather round in the rearview mirror, so I'm just going to milk it as long as I can. Gather round. Who are you? I'm Ethan. I'm Ethan Castle. I'm somebody wearing a purple Baltimore Ravens sweatshirt. Okay. I think my name is Vest Shorts. Oh, like shirt pants. Yes, thank you.
Who else but shirt pants?
I'm Benjamin Castle, and Brian Arambe the Footy Cat is keeping guard. Game round. I said at the end of our gather round recap. Wow, you don't usually use gather round as much as I do this. Oh no, I'm doing it on purpose at this point, but I said at the end of that episode, I feel like this is like a shift in the season. I'm not like cutting the season into 4-week blocks. I just thought I hadn't thought much about who our teams playing beyond this week. Yeah, you look at the opening month of the fixture, usually that's what people kind of pour over, especially with some of the traditional first round matchups. Easter week, you're a little bit off from the Anzac games, which have a couple standards. And so this is maybe these matchups some people have thought about less. I thought about this opener a good amount. Well, here's the thing. The way I'm breaking down the season, I think these next 3 weeks are kind of like a significant chunk because, we got the Anzac round, which starts, not ends, with Anzac Day this year. We get Wednesday footy and then Thursday afternoon footy. Then, round 8 has a bunch of rivalry games. I think that's the closest to the rivalry round that we have. And then I guess, because I'm just looking ahead at trying to how to split these up. The buys are round 12 through 14. 15. 12 through 15, right. Sir Doug Nichols rounds are rounds 10 and 11, but I feel like you kind of get into the spirit in round 9 just because the Suns go out to Darwin. So I guess the next 2 chunks of the season, I'd say, rounds 5 through 8. And 5 through 8 and then 9 through 15 are the next 2 chunks. You can say 5 through 7 and 8 through 15 if you want, but I think anyway, it's clear that rounds 7 and 9 are not in the same chunk. And it's clear that round 5 is very separate from the opening round 2 gather round block, even though one team is staying over in South Australia, so it feels like they may have a bit of an extended gather round. But they probably aren't going to wear the awesome jumper this week because it would kind of look a lot like their opponent. I have my gripes about the stealth jumper better than I liked last year's, and I think this year's was good. But they both look better off the oval. They look better at night, and it's like they were playing a mid-afternoon game. And also, just like, when you look at those jumpers, you don't think Frio. When you see the charcoal jumper, you still think Giants, for example. Yeah, whereas Frio, it needs to just have a random, Italian flag in it. And so we begin our game-by-game look at round 5 with a Thursday nighter between Melbourne and Brisbane. We really thought this was going to feel differently from how it really is going in because we've got 4-1 versus 1-3. The Lions did have a pretty tough opening to the schedule, considering that the game that was the least significant on people's radars out of those 3 losses was a trip out west, which is always difficult. I would think, though, if you were asking most people what the Lions' record would be at this point, 3-1, you'd probably get 3-1 or maybe some 2-2, but definitely not 1-3. The thing is, they had the one guaranteed win this past week. The others, you could have said they were favored in all 3, but not by huge margins. And once you took out Neil from that Frio game, that obviously tilted things as it turned out. This will be a Fox Sports 2 broadcast more than half of this week's games are on one of those Fox Sports channels. 4 on FS2, 1 on FS1. Because Australia is now off daylight time, this will be 7:30 p.m. for local viewers of both clubs. For Americans, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. Both matchups last year were also national TV games, but on Friday nights. Round 2, Max Gawn got injured early, and the Lions were up 40, 12 minutes left.
Oh no! Oh no!
You know, if it wasn't for that clip, I think it would have been way less memorable. Would have just been like, oh yeah, there's a power outage. I feel like you could have had BT going crazy. It's like, goodness gracious me, the power's gone out. Fuck, I can't believe that. Demons ended up making it an 11-point game, but it did not feel like an 11-point game at all. Round 18's rematch at the G, where this fixture will be on Thursday, was probably one of the home and away games of the year. Yes, the Demons scoring 4 goals in the final 7 minutes, 2 of them from Jake Melksham. He had the game winner with 33 seconds left to win 105-104. Especially for a Melbourne game, I was surprised at just how little defensive pressure there was off of clearances, just because everyone could slice through the middle super easily. I didn't expect that as much from Melbourne. I went back and watched this one again just to remember how it went down, and Clayton Oliver was out. So you thought, oh, Petrarca would have to lift in the midfield? No, he kicked 4-2 from 26 and spent a lot of time forward. Kazi Pickett kicked 3 goals, but also had time in the center early on. So between Pickett, Petrarca, and Max Gawn having a super dominant game against Oscar McInerney, you had kind of a different mix and maybe some less expected successes in that game. It probably caught the Lions off guard. Now, of course, Kazi's not going to be in this week because he was suspended for his high bump on Jake Saligo, which for some reason the Demons challenged. That challenge was so stupid that I would want to add a second game to it. Yes, I like an appeals process where there's like a punishment to failing, when it's like outright stupid like that. I'm not saying that David Zina shouldn't have to cover as many tribunals. I mean, he is kind of a glutton for punishment at this point. We have finished deliberating on that. And also, I think that they really need to start bringing back points for repeat offenses, because this is the 3rd time Kazi's done this in a season and change. I've been a big-time Kazi fan. We know you have too. But the fact is, he's had a lot of just dumb, reckless plays that endanger people, and that needs to not happen. So when it comes to replacing Kazi, then, who could be really dynamic enough for it? I said in the recap that maybe you could consider bringing Caleb Windsor more inside, maybe prime him for some more center time with Lockie Hunter rehabbing from the VFL and probably coming back in when he's healthy. I can't see him staying out. You could have... Oh, wait. Debut alert, apparently. Ooh, Colton Fulstrup. I didn't realize he has so much glow. Yeah, 6'1", midfielder, able to play a bit taller, has been averaging 21 and 7 tackles in the VFL. Pick 13 from out west. It was Ryan Daniels, the Perth reporter, who actually broke that for us. And as a reminder, Colton Fulstrup is the most hockey name in footy. Yeah, I'm surprised he doesn't play for like the London Knights or the Brandon Wheat Kings or something. You think some Australian team names are silly, and then you find out these like minor league and junior team names for stuff in America. I mean, you got, for example, are they AA, the Montgomery Biscuits? Yes. The Burlington Sock Puppets? Yes, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. High Point Rockers. Yeah, I know a guy who plays for the Rumble Ponies. They're the AA affiliate of the Mets.
It's about the Mets, baby. Love the Mets. All right, baby. Let's go. Get a home run, baby. Love the Mets. Let's go Mets.
And this guy transferred to Cal and played baseball and football there, Brendan McElwain. I'm thinking about the real funny independent ones, like, you know what the new one is in Danville, Virginia? What is that one? The Danville Dairy Daddies. Wow. This is better than the New Orleans Baby Cakes. Wait, that was a AAA team. Yep. But there's one other. The Spire City Ghost Hounds. Frederick, Maryland. They'll be back next year. They are sitting out a season until the league expands to 12 teams. And then they're back to the Keys? No, I think that they're going to be back as the Ghost Hounds. Good. I don't know. On Brisbane's side, Lachie Neale and Zach Bailey both have minor ankle concerns. Even with the short turnaround, I would think both are good to go, but if not, Jared Lyons and Devin Robertson would be next up. Assuming Neil plays, it'll be his 250th, and I would think we'd have heard if he wasn't playing. A 5-time club best and fairest, 2 at Freo, 3 at Brisbane. We know about his all-league honors, of course. And I think the past couple years we've noticed just how much of an edge he actually still has. Because when you think edge on the lines, you talked about it last week, you think Zorko's probably first up. And then I noticed Darcy Gardner kind of has that to him too. But after Zorko, one of the first guys you now think of is Neil. And then, of course, shirtless Devin Robertson. The Deals are currently favored by 14.5 despite the absence of Pickett. Considering both teams' forms this year, as well as the Lions' struggles at the G, I have no problem with that line whatsoever. I'm actually picking the Lions to win this game. Not just to cover, but to win. Yeah. What do you think will be the difference then? Having lost 15 of their last 16 at the G and 8 of 9 since they began their top 4 streak in 2019. That's due to come to an end at some point, and Melbourne doesn't have Kazi Pickett. Do you think Pickett is going to be that much of a difference there with the ability for some pieces to cover in the aggregate there? I would think not just Colton Thulstrup, but maybe Cade Chandler to have more of an inside run. Yeah. Remember in opening round, Melbourne was probably 1 Kazi Pickett away from winning that game? You said 1 Kazi Pickett and 1 Harrison Petty. Yeah. Well, I think it's going to happen. I'm really hoping the Lions win because I can see them at 2 and 4. I cannot see them at 1 and 5. And we get them at the GABA in a week. Also, my tipping last week was fucking excellent. I went 8 for 9 because I never tipped Cats. So essentially you were perfect. Yeah, because I did think Cats had a better than 50% chance of beating the Dogs. Also, how much did Melbourne win by? 15? I had them by 16. So close. I'm tipping a couple of legit upsets this week. No results last week actually surprised me. How we got there was surprising.
How did I get here? The end.
Well, that actually was the end of that, covering that game. Western Bulldogs versus Essendon. Marvel Stadium. I can't believe it had been this long without a Friday night Bulldogs game. It is amazing how many times this team gets put on Friday night and on Thursday on occasion. Yeah, 2022 we saw that especially. I mean, it's been like every year though. But after being runners-up and really nosing at our first year covering the sport with this podcast, it was about half their games? It was something ridiculous like that. The normal Friday start time here, 7:40 p.m. local under the roof. 5:40 a.m. Eastern, 2:40 Pacific for the U.S. That'll be on Fox Soccer Plus. Both clubs sit at 2 and 2 after losses to the Cats and Power, respectively. These teams have met 34 times since 2000. In 2020, they were pushed to the Gold Coast. 2021, they had their elimination final at UTAS because both of them were there. There was also that 1-point Sydney Derby eliminator. Their 32 other meetings have all been at Marvel Stadium. Last year, it was an Essendon home game. Was that a Friday night game? I don't remember, but the Bulldogs won by 41. It was a Friday night. I win. Very good. That was a 6-2 second quarter for the Dogs, and Tom Liberatore and Adam Treloar were both really good. And it was game number 100 for former cricketer Alex Keith and not former cricketer Ed Richards, and they were both good. We noted it as maybe Keith's best game in our time watching. Yeah, I feel like if we had been doing America's Brownlow at that time, we probably would have given a vote to him. Richards, of course, came back this past week, and the Bulldogs' best play from the back, their best rebound passages largely flowed through him. I'm not sure if you'd really make any changes in the back, though it is important to note that my sleeper, James O'Donnell, another former cricketer, was an emergency this past week. If you're looking for some shifting on the list, James Harms has been pushing his case in the VFL quite well, and Riley Garcia also. I'm just fascinated by the sub pair from last week for the Bulldogs. Jack McRae coming in for Caleb Daniel. And was that a you suck sub in your mind or a tactical? No, it was a tactical sub. Daniel was not his best, but he was not what I would call bad. It's pretty obvious that McRae needs to be in the lineup, at least to everyone not named Luke Beveridge. I don't know. The question is, who do you move out to get him in? Maybe it solves itself because someone has a minor injury or gets managed. My answer would be Oscar Baker, because Baker's shown his ability to be dynamic as a sub and can be pretty flexible. I think he's done well in the sub role. That would make sense to me. I like the wake-up call, though, of subbing out a player like Daniel when he's having a down game. So many coaches would just try to back in their senior players and let them ride it out. So actually like a decent thing Luke Beveridge did? Or no, we're not allowed to praise him. No, it's Beveridge who was wrong. Usually it is. On Essendon's side, they will be down Archie Perkins with a hamstring injury for 3 to 4 weeks. And Will Setterfield is going to be out 2 to 3 weeks with a knee injury. But Sam Durham comes back from his concussion. And Varna, or as some people call him, Elijah Sadas, could be back in. That seems like a pretty obvious one at this point. VFL was off this past week during the Gather Round. And they had that VFL versus Sandful game, which I believe the Southerners won. I think it was during one of the AFL games, which is unfortunate. I wish they could have really been able to showcase that more, but it was tough to schedule things to leave that as primary viewing for anybody. Speaking of state level stuff, the mark from, what was the guy's name? Ned something or other. Oh, this was from the Sandford U18s. Oh, this was insane. Let me find, I'm going to find this. Found it through, Ned Bowman. Thank you. It was through AFL Central. I'm watching this again as we're going through this. The actual AFL page might have posted it too, or Fox Footy, or somebody else significant. Yeah, like the extra elevation and a spinning grab. Looks like this guy. Yeah, the actual AFL page posted. He was on Norwood. Yeah, Norwood U18s. They were getting beaten pretty badly in the game, but that was one hell of a mark. It'll probably get him a lot more attention. That's a great thing about like all these games being recorded now is people can get attention much more easily from the lower ranks. You know, this is something to show to more Americans and then be like, oh yeah, that was in a U18 game. Other things to look at for Essendon. What to do in defense against all the talls for the Bulldogs, because they have a hard enough time matching up as is. And I especially want to mention Rising Star nominee Sam Darcy. WA Ho's mad. Yeah, it was deserved. The Eagles member here says that it should have been Darcy, and I think that's pretty indicative there. If you are looking, though, for some taller defense options, pick 25 for number 2022, Lewis Hayes could be considered. I don't think you'd have any other huge changes there. Maybe Nick Hyde could go into the 22 because he's done well enough as the sub, and it's nice to have a guy who's just available to be that extra just whenever you need on the field. The Dogs have won 3 straight since their 2021 finals meeting and 9 of 10 since 2015, and the odds makers are backing them in to extend those streaks. I think this is just a pretty simple one. They have the superior midfield. I think Essendon is not built to win physical games. I think the Bulldogs can make this physical. Do you expect Nick Martin to get 40 meaningless touches again? I don't know. What I do know is that I want to pay close attention to Zach Merritt because I feel like I haven't zeroed in on him like I have on some of the other top midfielders. But I want to see how he stacks up against, the Bont-Libba-Treloar combo. We're venturing out to the ACT for the first game on Saturday, 1:45 p.m. local time. So for Americans on FS2, 11:45 p.m. Eastern, 8:45 Pacific, you should see a packed Manuka Oval and Tom Green fan club as the Giants take on St Kilda, both coming off wins in South Australia. This is their third meeting, actually, in the Canberra suburb. They have split the prior 2. The Giants, by the way, 4-0 for the first time in their history, and Callum Brown is a forward. These teams met once in the home and away season last year, a 12-point Saints win at Giants Stadium in round 10. A game where we thought Mitch Owens died and then he was just chilling. You also thought that with Carl Warner in, round 1 this year? Yeah, I prefer when they don't die. We thought that was Javid best injury bad. Oh no, it looked in real time awful. Now, what was the indicator of success for the Saints that day in the forward line? Max King made his first shot. Did he do that against the Tigers this past week? No, but they still won. Yeah, and he actually helped make up for that somewhat. Ooh, Max King versus Sam Taylor this week is going to be lit. By the way, I figured out what it was when I had said the other day when we were talking about Mark nominees, what should have been in there. It was not something Max King did. It was Sam Taylor snatching one away from Ben King. And I would have put that in the Mark of the Week conversation, even if there was no elevation to it. He basically just came in right in front of him and snatched it. Like a DB jumping a route, except he didn't really jump it with anything other than his hands. Percent chance that after playing the Suns this past week, a Giants defender calls Max King Ben. Yeah, I mean, are they doing it as an insult or just by mistake? I'm talking by mistake here. Nah, 32. Okay. Like in an interview or to his face? Either. All right, about a third chance. I'll take it. The big thing I remember about these Giants-Saints matchups last year is how impressed we were with Kieran breaks through them, because it's tough matching up against Rowan Marshall, less so in the hitouts themselves, but more in the follow-up work. And that round 10 game was Kieran Briggs' first game of 2023, and he won that matchup. He also did in the elimination final, when the Giants won by 4 goals at the G in front of nearly 68,500. In that game, Greater Western Sydney set a league record by winning at their 11th different venue of the season. Ross Lyon made a fucky-wucky in that game. He did not send Marcus Windhager to Josh Kelly until after halftime.
Yeah, and that was without Steven Cornelio, so it wasn't like, I mean, who else would you have considered tagging? I guess, Tom Green? I could have been talked into Tom Green, but the fact that Windhager wasn't tagging anybody was a big mistake.
I think Lyon has learned since, because he's seen him being more willing to tag players at the start of this season. But yeah, it was a late out for Cornelio with an eye injury, and Xavier O'Halloran was the one to come in. But Kelly went off in that game in the first half, and the Giants kept a 20-plus margin for all but 1 minute from the middle of the second quarter onward. A persistent problem from the Saints' exit last year was their low conversion rate off inside 50s. The kicks entering them often being less defined. In that final, they had 11 goals from 56 entries, a very, very poor conversion rate. Now, the Saints will be getting back Windhager this week because he had that suspension for the high bump on Sam Durham. And in the back, Dougal Howard could be available for his season debut. Who would he come in for? That's the question there, because I've been largely okay with their tall mix.
Yeah, I think Zane Cordy, for the most part, has been good. He still makes a few negative plays here and there. I didn't think he made as many this past week. I thought this past week was probably his smoothest game.
I thought of him as their second best tall defender, obviously behind Cal Wilkie, who really commanded things for the back of the fourth quarter.
But yeah, Josh Battle isn't quite a tall, though he does some tall defender-ish stuff. He is more of a ball mover than other guys his size.
It's a tough call with the Saints having fixed so much in the second half.
Maybe you shuffle some other guys around, like play Wangani and Milra up in the midfield and take someone like Ryan Burns out, or manage Brad Hill.
I would be hesitant to manage Hill because he was one of those most important players in the second half, and I'd like him just to be able to break through lines. So maybe this isn't quite the week for Howard to come back in.
I think Ryan Burns would be one who could end up getting moved out.
If anyone, yeah. I'd liked Burns.
I hate to say it, but Matthias or Darcy Wilson?
Wilson was another one who lifted in the fourth despite having a lot of turnovers. I think he had 7 turnovers, but had a couple really important plays on the outside in the fourth. So maybe you can see him try to maybe harass either Lockie Ash or Lockie Whitfield and try to create some rebound from there. I think the recklessness is kind of warranted against the Giants with how quickly they operate.
That's part of what makes this matchup fascinating to me. By the way, for the Giants, maybe Callan Ward comes back from his shoulder injury. Harvey Thomas got subbed out last week, or maybe you get Nick Haynes back into the sub role instead of James Peatling. Haynes waiting for his first game back after his first child was born. Congratulations to him and his wife. I feel like we may have to wait a while to see the baby rocking celebration from him. I don't think he's usually a very likely candidate to score. I mean, he did score 9 months ago.
More like 10 now, but yes, exactly.
You know who else could go out because he didn't do a ton last week was Toby Bedford.
Unfortunately, he hasn't done much. And if you're trying to back in Thomas to improve and maybe see how he operates more closely with Brent Daniels, not having him in the way, then maybe that's the case there. I know we're also waiting on Darcy Jones to get some time as a half-forward flank. So there's some pressure there on that group. If you don't perform, let's see how quickly Adam Kingsley is willing to swing the axe.
There's also just more than enough talent to go around, so there are spots where you can just manage somebody.
Also want to mention that this will be Ross Lyon's 150th game as the Saints coach. 121 in his first stint from 2007 to 2011 before going out west. Of the 46 Saints head coaches, including caretakers, Ross Lyon will be the second to reach 150 games.
See, that's not good. Not only does it mean that you've lost a lot because coaches aren't sticking around, it also means you have a reputation as a place coaches don't stick around, which worsens your applicant pool.
Sort of a positive feedback thing going on there. And the only person to have reached that mark before Lion will is, well, one of the greatest coaches the game has seen in 4-time premiership coach Alan Jeans.
What makes this game fun to me is that you've got not quite an unstoppable force versus an immovable object, but you've got an object that doesn't like moving in the Saints against an object that likes to move in the Giants. Quite the clash here.
The Saints have an ability to put on fast counterattacks.
Yeah, I mean, they have speed. Do they try to tap into that, or do they try to just suffocate the Giants, though?
I hope they don't go like complete total freeze mantle, but Ross Ball can kind of do that. I would not be surprised if this ends up being the Giants' lowest scoring effort thus far this year.
Last week was like the ugliest version of Ross Ball. They won, but it was not a fun watch. At least the first half was a terrible watch.
Second half was fun live. Was watching it with my dad.
But yeah, the first half sucked. Giants favored by 19.5. That actually seems a little high, especially with those styles. You're not going to believe this. I am actually, in part just because I don't want to be picking favorites every time, every week.
You are tipping the Saints.
I am. This may totally backfire. They may lose like 85-36.
Do you think the Saints are a higher chance to win if they control the pace versus the Giants if they do?
No, here's the thing. I was thinking about who can win at the other's pace.
Okay, so yeah, you're kind of thinking the inverse of me.
I mean, here's the thing. Ross Ball can kind of be an equalizer, whereas a game that goes the way the Giants want, the Saints can adapt to that and use their speed. It's just a matter of Ross's willingness to. I don't know, there's just something weird about this one. Also that it's in Canberra, where other than like one game against the Suns last year, the Giants have just been ass.
I would definitely take the Saints to cover here with this 19.5 line.
Yeah, I mean, I would put the line probably like somewhere between 11.5 and 13.5. That seem fair?
Seems fair enough. Let's see if the Saints are great, because of course, good teams win, great teams cover. Which makes it all the more remarkable that the UConn Huskies covered the spread in all 6 of their NCAA tournament games.
Fun question for you. Who is the last team to win an NCAA tournament game against UConn?
Oh, gosh. The 2022 tournament, has to be some minor school. Is it a minor conference team?
Yeah.
Jeez. It's not an HBCU, is it?
No. It was in a 12-5 game.
Huh. Was this like a classic 12-seed upset like a Western Kentucky?
If you had to have me guess, I think of them as perennially a 13 seed.
So not an MVC team, because they would be a little higher probably.
Correct. They are not in the MVC.
I was going to say, because Drake has the potential to pull off upsets every year. That's just the vibe I get out of them.
I'm trying to think of hints that aren't dead giveaways. It's a team that hasn't been back to the tournament since.
Have they changed conferences since then?
No.
Are they an FBS football school?
Yes.
Do we know somebody who went to this school?
Yes.
Is this person a Giants fan?
Yes.
We're talking, of course,
you got that faster than I expected.
We're talking, of course, about our friend Rick Shaibani from the LA Dragons. He is an alumnus of New Mexico State.
Yeah, the dead giveaway hints I were going to give were something like where we know someone who went there. Their next season really went to shit.
Yeah, a shootout incident after their rivalry game against the University of New Mexico.
No, before, they didn't even play the game because of it.
I thought they played once, but not a second time. Wow.
No. Yeah, and the hazing thing that had stuff that rhymed with mexual assault.
Yeah, wow. How about we move on then, huh?
Things got better this past year.
Yeah, hopefully
they completed their season.
Yeah, I think that by definition is better. So last year, Carlton and Adelaide was the opener, and the Crows draxed the Blues sklounced.
Sklounced.
With an 8-2 first quarter. And it was the younger side of the Crows that really showed. They had 15 guys on that side with 25 or fewer games experience. This year, though, the Crows are 0-4. This game is also at Marvel, so I don't see an upset here. We know what the Crows are like on the road, and they have so many other issues to start the season.
Watching the Crows last week, I said, at some point, they're going to have that, where the hell has this been all year game?
Okay, but it's going to be a game in South Australia.
Absolutely. And if it's not going to be showdown, I feel like that's too easy a pick. My pick is round 14 against the Swans, right before the bye. I mean, I feel like it'll probably happen a few times over the course of the season, but that'll be like the best opponent it happens against.
That game last year, Nick Murray really showed well against the Coleman medalist. Of course, he's still recovering from his ACL. And while the defense has not been as much of a problem this year, with the pieces they currently have, I can just expect at least one of those Coleman medalists, Reed, Charlie Curnow, to go off. Do you want to baptize Dan Curtin by fire?
At this point, if you want to look at saving this season, yes.
And I think it's just time for him to be in for so many other reasons as well. Why Matthew Nicks has not given him or Billy Dowling their debuts yet, I don't get, because they can't really do any more in the twos to show that they belong. And I'd pick them over anybody that has been omitted from the AFL side, dropped from the side this year. Shake things up, bring in somebody new. If you're going to be that 2017 Swans-like team who makes the 8 after a winless start like this, you've got to move the magnets now. Yeah, you might lose another game or two while you figure out that mix, but it's never too late to make a change when you're in this situation.
My other thing is I see one team in Carlton that has moved the ball with purpose from their midfield.
And in the Crows, the only person you can say has done that all year round is, well, someone who's more of a halfback in Brody Smith.
Yep.
Well, I think Saligo has shown well in that group enough of the time, maybe more by hand instead of by foot.
I've liked him. I've liked his physicality. And I like that, unlike the other guys, he seems to usually be thinking a play ahead.
I would love for Josh Rochelle to start thinking like that too, and I would even consider...
I would like to see him just get more of the ball.
Well, that's another reason why you put him in the middle. Give Rochelle some time there. Give Dowling some center bounce time too if you put him in, and I would most definitely put him in, and just shake things up.
Carlton will be forced into at least one change. Lockie Fogarty is serving a 1-week suspension for his hit on Nat Fife. He also is dealing with a wrist injury, so he would have been out anyway.
From that same play.
Yeah.
He honestly ended up suspending himself in multiple ways then.
Elijah Hollins is a test. He was subbed out last week with an adductor injury. I know he hasn't gotten the ball as much as his brother, but I've actually really, really liked how he's played.
Having the bigger body in there in the center to pair up with Patrick Cripps has been great. I noted that from their preseason hit out against Geelong. I saw it in his first 2 games in the AFL home and away for the Blues as well. And even if Sam Walsh comes back, which he likely is ready to do for his season debut and his 100th game, Elijah Hollins would be a necessary in to still have. He is in that best 22, if not the best 18 already.
So who comes out?
I mean, Fogarty.
Okay.
That's an easy one there.
Would he stay out after?
Yes, I think he would. It's going to be even tougher for him to get in when Jack Martin and Jesse Motlop get healthier on the forward side as well. Even with a 4-0 start, Michael Voss is going to be forced into some tough changes in the coming weeks.
Caleb Marchbank is coming back from concussion protocol.
He should not be back in. Brody Kemp has earned that spot.
Kemp's also had some stuff going forward, right?
In the reserves, yes. So you could flex him at times. You could have him as a sub, but I think Kemp has done enough to earn that spot over Marchbank. If there is someone else to come out and make way in the forward line, I mean, Corey Durden's had a bit of a down game. You could have him or Orazio Fantasia. Go into the sub role and maybe get Ashton Moyer, pick 29, his debut. It's Ashton Moyer, I believe. Did you take note of him in that preseason game against Geelong, or was that more me?
That was you. I was not watching that closely.
Yeah, so he's around 6'3" or so, able to play above his height really well. Good endurance for a forward. I think, especially in a game against a lesser opponent, would be nice to get him in there for that first opportunity and see if he can hold down his spot from there. Couple milestones for the Blues. It'll be Blake Acres' 150th game, 75 with the Saints, 45 with the Dockers, and it will be his 30th with the Blues. And it'll be Michael Voss's 450th combined between playing and coaching.
I mean, his biggest achievement is what he said to his brother during a game.
He's had some excellent, I guess you call them sledges,
but there's one that takes the cake.
My dad fucked your mom.
Yes.
There was another one that he mentioned on the front bar one time. He was getting into it with Shannon Burns in a game against the Cats. This was obviously later in Voss's career, but I think Burns was just not having a good game, and Voss was getting on to him. And after halftime, he told the umpire, hey, no, we can't start playing yet. There's an Oz kicker still on the field.
Damn!
Fooled the umpire for a second, actually. Well, you know, my favorite sledge, Termel. Is this a college basketball player? No. It's a former baseball player, Termel Sledge.
Termel Sledge.
Yep. He hit the first home run in Nationals history.
I do not remember this person at all.
I do, because I'm smarter than you.
Did you see him play in person? Is that why?
I don't think so. Just a fun name.
That's an amazing name. Wow. Blues are 23.5-point favorites.
I would set this higher. I think they're going to win 98-64.
I'll put you down for it.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Hey, it's us again. Reminder that we're on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Americans Footy. Personally, I am at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter. You need to watch that space for my graduate school announcement. It's getting serious now.
I am on Castle Media at Twitter. Brian Harambe's on Instagram, a cat named Brian.
Where's he now, underneath the bed?
I think.
Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking, we've only had one game so far where both teams got into the hundreds, and that barely happened. There was like, what? It was like 131 to 101.
Yeah, Sydney and Essendon.
Do you see a game this round that could be like super high scoring?
If any, I mean, we've seen Melbourne and Brisbane have that potential.
That's what I was thinking too.
That's the only one that I really see happening, unless, I mean, maybe this next game that we're going to talk about with Gold Coast and Hawthorn, if things just go really upside down.
That would require Hawthorn to actually kick the ball between like the tall sticks in the middle instead of the shorter one and one of the tall ones.
With a down game from a couple people from last week, that, I mean, I can see it, but any game I would give the chance to Thursday night.
So here's the thing. This game might suck. This might just be like a blowout Suns win. But I am actually really interested in this game from the individual performance standpoint, because both teams had a bunch of young players show promise last week. You know, the Suns, I obviously went on about Sam Closey. You also had a good debut for Ethan Reed. You had Jed Walter in there again.
Will Graham as well. The only one of the Suns draft picks from this year yet to make his debut is Jake Rogers at pick 14.
And then on Hawthorne's side, I liked what I saw out of Max Ramsden, and will continue beating the drum for him. And I think they've figured something out with Lloyd Meek. So I think potential for this to be really compelling, even if it ends up being like a 5+ goal Suns victory.
And currently the line's at minus 25.5 in the Suns' favor, so could very well be. I like this game kind of from a team standpoint as well, because it's not just about who performs individually, it's who does that within the system that the coaches set up. How much does Sam Mitchell stick with the stuff that he's been? Expect few changes from Sunday, considering how close they ended up getting in the second half. I wouldn't be shocked if Blake Hardwick was just forward the entire game. He had been training it forward all summer and had 4 second-half goals. And with Luke Bruce and Mitch Lewis both still out 1 to 2 weeks, I hate to say it, but I'd rather have Jack Gunston and Ned Reeves on the bench and let Hardwick continue getting these chances at forward. This will be a 2:30 a.m. game for us. It'll be our first time with games starting at the exact same time this year. 5:30 on the East Coast and then 7:30 p.m. locally at, I still can't believe this is the actual name, People First Stadium. Insurance.
You know, PFI or PF Insurance Stadium would sound so much better than People First Stadium. People First Stadium is just an objectively bad name.
It makes me think of Up With People.
Well, what I do like to think of when I think of this is, you know, the Human Fund, money for people.
I think we've gone on about this.
Yeah, it's been discussed, but it's just not a good name, you know. NG is bad too. You know, if that was just NG, like the letter N, the letter G, it would be better. Yeah, I think just like abbreviations are better generally. like NRG Stadium in Houston, I'm not complaining about that one. That one works. These teams met once last year, and it was a 67-point Suns victory. Mac Andrew had his best game before this past week. Braden Fiorini was good. Sam Stupid Sexy Flanders was good.
And that was more in a midfield job where he was kept at halfback last week. So that's a wash there on the individual side, especially with Closey now having that midfield time. You also had David Swallow as the sub this past week. Hadn't seen that much from him. He did set a record this past week, though,
by playing at his 22nd different venue, a venue list that includes China.
Yep, Zhangguan Stadium in Shanghai. The Hawks actually led that game last year at quarter time.
And then they got outscored, I have to do math, 89-15. Jeez.
Yeah, they failed to match their quarter time score for the rest of the game.
That sounds like something the Eagles would do.
I was literally about to say that. At this point, we're finishing each other's sandwiches.
The real highlight of this game last year was Hawago Oya's family's first time leaving Papua New Guinea to see him. They had him in the circle after. That was like my favorite Stuart Dew thing was like if you made a significant trip to see the Suns, see a player, you were in the circle. I wonder, would he have let us in the circle? I feel like no, because we didn't have a relative on the team, but
yeah, that's a thing there. I mean, we can't say, hi, we're Matt Rowell's cousins.
I mean, maybe if and we could say we have the same diet as Matt Rowell and then just start eating grass.
Matt Rowell, Novak Djokovic, us, all majorly successful athletes. For the Suns, this will be Jack Lukosius' 100th game, and he was in a weird role last week. Yeah, that's why another reason why I'm highlighting him. Spent more time in defense as well, with Will Graham and Jed Walter taking up the forward time. He's another one who could be thrown around during games, flex between. I still really don't know where his best spot is because I know they use mercurial a lot on broadcasts, but I think it's a great word to describe Lukosius.
Well, as a forward, I just think of him as either 5 goals or 0.
Like super inconsistent.
Yeah, I feel like mercurial would be a better description of Mac Andrews' game.
And heck, they've trialed him forward too, though I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I think he's a great interceptor. It's just he might need to... how we saw with... I hate to even bring this up because it was so ugly to watch, but John Segler, it's like, oh shit, I got to handball to someone immediately. I cannot be trusted with this thing.
You saw that even sometimes from Rado Golea in the back. He learned. Hence why I make Colin. So if there's anyone to do that, I mean, I would much rather have Sam Collins just go up right to him, get on an overlap, and blast it.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bam! Wow. Bam!
Would you make any changes if you were Damian Hardwick? Yes, you lost, but he saw so much promise out of the young group against the current leaders.
I would keep in pretty much all the new dudes from last week. I mean, if there's a change to make, maybe find a way to get Levi Casbolt back in there.
I think with Jed Walter, and that's a no-go, and Ethan Reed as well. And
I would just probably change up how I use Ethan Reed. Put him in that Luke Jackson-ish role almost. Luke Jackson when Sean Darcy is playing.
That's topical. Was that an intended transition?
No, it was not. It was just
what I'm thinking of, Luke Jackson when Sean Darcy's in, Mark Blitzovs when Reece Stanley is in. Have him in.
Blitzovs doesn't go forward that much.
No, but what I do like that they do is that they have them as those second talls in the center square.
I feel like if there are any changes to be made this week, though, the guys who I think are most at risk, Thomas Berry, which is funny because I had really liked how he'd played before last game. I would say Nick Holman.
Who would you say goes
Maybe Bodie Uland.
I'd love for Connor Buderick to stay in, not just because he is my sleeper pick for this year, and I think he's just a genuinely good halfback flank who just was kind of squeezed out.
I don't know. This is where I say Caleb Graham should be in. It's never going to happen, and I don't care. I'm still going to say it.
He needs to look for a better opportunity.
Yeah, he does. Find a team that needs just a big, tall defensive centerpiece, honestly. North. I mean, you'd have an opportunity there.
Where is he from? Oh, he is from Cairns, actually. He actually played at Palm Beach Currumbin, which is the club that a bunch of these academy guys played at.
Well, that doesn't help.
No, not at all. But honestly, whether you intended it or not, excellent transition into Port and Frio at the Adelaide Oval. So Frio were the ones who stayed over and basically had an extended gather round. This goes up directly against
Gold Coast and Hawthorn, so I'll be watching a replay of this one. Or actually I'll have it up on the TV on FS2. Yeah, I am doing this game, so what I'll probably end up doing is watch the Hawthorn game after, and I might cover up like the Hawthorn Gold Coast score on my screen. Although I'll probably still screw it up and see something during halftime because that's how these things work. I wish they still did the thing that they did. I think, was it in the 80s where it was like they did it just at the breaks and the host would say, if you don't want to know the score, look away now. I love that. Anyway, yes, Box Sports 2, both teams are 3-1. Port beat Essendon, did not face much resistance. Freo lost to Carlton in the umps. We both thought, yeah, probably a game Carlton should have won anyway, but how it happened was not right. This game will get underway at same time, 2:30 a.m. here, 5:30 a.m. on the East Coast, 11:30 a.m. in the most serene Republic of San Marino. There we go. 5:30 p.m. in Perth, 7 p.m. at the Adelaide Oval, and 7:30 in all of Australia's eastern states, because now Queensland actually is on a time zone that kind of makes sense. I feel like, again, this isn't like a funny Australia thing that doesn't get talked about enough, is that like for half the year, one of the states further east is half an hour behind a state further west. Yeah. Like there are a lot of silly Australia things that are well documented, like border time, democracy sausage. This is not one of them. Also, democracy sausage, while I'm on the subject, we should have it here. You want to like encourage people to show up and do stuff. Free food goes a long way, even if it's just like one glizzy. I could see Wisconsin really starting the democracy brat tradition. Oh yes, I could totally see that. Breweries and food trucks in Wisconsin like need to partner up and start doing these sorts of like election day promotions right there, and other places will follow suit. I don't know if I mentioned this. I think Wisconsin and Minnesota are the states I identify the most with culturally, even though I don't have like any relatives who live there or connections to any of the teams there. Just like we have a relative who lives in Minnesota. Oh, we do now, but nobody's like from there. But I say this because like they like drinking good beer and watching sports. These are my type of people. And their teams have just suffered a lot. And they're just like, they're nice people. Back to Port and Freo. I think Port Adelaide fans are nice people. A lot of people might disagree. We've met a decent amount of Freo fans online. And we've met a decent number of Port fans. So I think of the non-Victorian teams, we've met definitely the most Freo fans. Yeah, I mean, couple problems, especially in terms of like American fans. Yeah, like there's Lee Howerin, part of our fantasy league. He's over in Greenville, North Carolina, big ECU guy. So purple is the big thing for him. There's Leanne over in KCK. There's Gil Griffin's also in our league. He's down teaching further down south here in California. And then I can't think of at least one Port guy that we know who's in the U.S. One of the guys for the Creeds down in Los Angeles. Oh, that's right. Right. Anyway, well, I'm excited for this matchup. I think even with Port's win last week and Freo's loss, I'm still amped for this game. Just teams that I like watching. And it starts with Never Tear Us Apart. I mean, you either get that or you get like all the light shows and the Kevin Parker free own track before the fourth quarter and the rocker on the roof. So you really can't go wrong with this matchup. Should the hype track be before the fourth or the third? I've gotten okay with it before the fourth. I liked it to start the second half, but I feel like you probably also don't have everyone in their seats at that point, so I understand. Ethan, this matchup last year in round 23, this was one of the ones that you only watched, I think, in March. Yeah, wasn't the most exciting. Out in Perth, it was a 16-point Port Adelaide win. Freo tried to keep things slow. Port said, fuck that. We're going to burst through you at stoppages. And Zach Butters fought through a Hayden Young tag to be best on ground. Freo had really dominated home and away matchup in recent years. They had a 5-game win streak overall, 10 games in a row they'd won against Port at home. I remember one in 2022 that they won, like, I want to say it was 99-91. That sounds right. That was an entertaining game that I watched from a hotel in Michigan. I think you're right about that one. And I think the biggest positive out of that game for Freo was the debut of South Australian Tom Emmett, who I guess gets a second game in a row in front of a home state crowd. Always good on the forward pressure right away. Mature ager who fought through cancer and a severe Achilles tendon injury as well. He had 2 goals on debut then and is going to help people forget about Lachie Schultz. So as we're recording this around midnight on Wednesday morning American time, so getting towards 7 p.m. Melbourne time, We do know that Jeremy Finlayson has been suspended 3 games for his homophobic slur. We are of the belief that it should have been 6, maybe 5.
Here's the thing where I understand Taylor Walker's was like, he wasn't even playing in the game, whereas Finlayson's kind of just been like a heat of the moment thing, whereas Walker, I don't know if it was like he was yelling at a guy or how it came about.
What I will say is we haven't heard anything about any sort of provocation from something on the field. I would assume that means it's been unprovoked because Port would have probably come out and said something otherwise.
I don't know, but what I think rather than like getting all nitpicky about the details here, I think what's more important is that people learn from this and learn like, hey, this is bad. And I don't think at this point much is going to happen to shift people's opinions. I think, you know, if this had happened like say 15, 20 years ago, it would have been seen as nothing, whereas now it is something. There's still a ways to go to make progress in this field, but we have made progress and that shouldn't be undermined just because we still have a ways to go. Anyway, yeah, he's out 3 weeks.
Where do you see them changing things then with him out? I know we talked about maybe dropping him or putting him as more of a full field mark instead. So,
well, you bring back Sam Powell-Pepper, who can play as kind of like a half forward.
Yeah, he's back from his suspension from the preseason where he leveled Mark Keene's head. So that will help instantly. I know it is more of a rugby term. I think about people who can break lines and just kind of mess up opposing structures, and Sam Powell-Pepper is that type of player, and he's damn entertaining while doing it as well. So pumped for him to return. He'll come out really motivated, no doubt. He always is. Ollie Wines will also be available to return from his hamstring injury. I think now you kind of have to put him more outside with the mix that's working in the middle to be kind of a way to preserve him as well as they've done with Travis Boak. I think all that also means that Jace Burgoyne is a good pick to stay in the sub role. And I know you really liked him in that spot, Ethan.
Yeah, I like, you know, he's an explosive player. Maybe you try to work Powell-Pepper back in through the sub role, but I don't think that's the case since it's not like he's coming back from an injury. I'm just excited to watch him do like really fun, exciting Sam Powell-Pepper things.
As we alluded to earlier, Sean Darcy could be back in this week. If so, how do you manage him and Luke Jackson together? Darcy has done a little bit of that resting forward work. Jackson started off the year really hot in the ruck, cooled down a bit, and Tom DeConing did a nice job neutralizing him this past week. So how do you play those cards and how do you shuffle them mid-game?
Well, this is tough because Jackson was so good as the sole ruckman that I don't think you want to just go right back to, you know, we're going to automatically just have Jackson as like the forward who occasionally drops into a ruck role. I think you manage Darcy's minutes a little bit more and maybe even sub him out if nobody gets hurt.
That's exactly.
Even though it wouldn't be a like-for-like sub, this is also a team that, well, Ivan Soldo's been playing well is the other thing, though.
I like the idea, though, that if Jackson is going well enough, you can manage minutes and get someone who's more of a spark on the smaller end, whether that's Neil Erasmus, who could very well be in with Michael Frederick out, and Sam Switkowski potentially sidelined too. Jager O'Meara has been the sub each of the past 3 weeks, and while he's been good there, I would love for him to be elevated and get a full game in. If I were making the call right now, if Darcy were available, I would say, yeah, have Darcy subbed out for Erasmus at 3/4 time.
Yeah, even though it's not like for like, I think, again, it's all about just managing minutes.
Of course, it's not going to be like for the only team who's going to go like for like with like a tall sub consistently would be maybe the Brisbane Lions with Darcy Ford. And even that's less likely now.
Yeah. What I'm looking at here, I just think, God, what do you do to make up for the production from Frederick, and if Switkowski misses?
That's where O'Meara can come in really big, and that's where Bailey Banfield would probably spend less time resting in the defensive half.
I just think there's a lot that you got to replace there in terms of like the dynamic production. I think it's where Michael Walters really has to stand up and play up to the level he did in that second quarter a couple weeks ago against the Crows. Maybe with better goal kicking.
Maybe.
Honestly, even if he doesn't kick for goal well, just creating some action there, I think is what really matters the most.
Power favored by 19.5. I will wait to judge this line until we find out whether or not Darcy is in.
I think 19.5 is appropriate.
We'll also note that this is a double up and they'll be rematching in the closing round out west. Other double ups from this round, actually the only other one out of the games we talked about so far
is Melbourne and Brisbane. They'll be at the Gabba in round 16. This next game is also a double up. Geelong and North, the perk of finishing outside the 8. They'll be at Blundstone Arena in round 20, but Sunday afternoon, they'll be at the Cattery. 1 p.m. local for Americans, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific on Saturday. This is their 3rd straight year meeting down the highway. And I remember this game a bit from round 17 last year because it was going on as I was picking you up from the airport.
Yeah, I had landed coming back from Iowa at that point. Something interesting, you mentioned they're playing at Blundstone. Cats have made trips to Blundstone 2 of the last 3 years. How about this? When is the last time these teams played at Marvel?
I'm going to say 2016.
2019, but before that, Geelong had a couple of home games at Marvel against them.
Yeah, that was something they usually had like once a year, and you know that would be a common double up when it was the Scots coaching against each other.
Anyway,
yeah, that game last year, 125-63 for the Cats, 8 goals to 2 in the first quarter, and I remember we just kind of stopped what we were doing as we were watching that because we realized, shit, Griffin Logue tore his ACL.
Yeah, I like Griffin Logue. When's he going to be back?
Still a month or 2 away, I think. They could really use him in defense.
I mean, I think of him as kind of moving guys along the wing and stuff.
Still a good enough intercept defender that he's someone that would be into their 18 right away in that role in itself. Still surprised they dropped Toby Pink last week for a game in South Australia, but
I wasn't thinking about where the game was. I was just thinking
he hadn't delivered.
I was just surprised that they took him out so quickly because he seemed to be a guy that there was a lot of excitement surrounding within their fan base.
So do you think he's back this week then?
I don't know.
I think Charlie Coleman has cemented himself a spot in defense with a polished turd-worthy performance.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
The only other change that I'd really be keen on them making is to see if Tyler Sellers would come in for his debut as another tall option there, alleviating some of the pressure off Nick Larkey and trying him out against a tougher team to just see how that works and what kind of future you have there with him. He was their supplemental addition to the list ahead of the start of the season. The other thing I remember about this game last year was it was a celebration of Zach Toohey. It was his 265th game, which meant he surpassed Jim Steins for the most games played by an Irish-born player. Chris Scott said, fuck it, I'll name 3 Irishmen on the center line, including, oh wait, he doesn't look like that anymore.
O'Sheen Mullen, he got a haircut. Without the hair, he just looks like the least Irish guy ever.
Donated what he'd grown over the past 4 years for a cause back in County Mayo. I personally prefer County barbecue sauce.
What about County Worcestershire? County Hollandaise? County Mornay? You need to name a sauce. Doesn't work if I'm the only one naming sauces.
County Bechamel.
There we go, that's better.
County Alfredo. County Peanut, because Thai peanut sauce. There is no mediocre peanut sauce in Thai food, by the way. Either it is excellent or it is absolute shite. There's a milestone to celebrate for this Cats game if no changes are made, and I would imagine because it's at home, you'd keep Rhys Stanley in for his 200th.
Yeah, I would think so.
We love Toby Conway. We think he should keep getting opportunities, but let Stanley have his day here.
Yeah, I would have no issue with that.
Bigger question for me is it worth it to bring Patrick Dangerfield back in this week? Or do you go younger? Maybe let Mitch Nevitt contest in the middle against Luke Davies-Uniacke. This is a week where, again, considering the opponent, you can manage things a little bit more slowly.
There are a few different things here that we could see between Zach Toohey and Jake Kolajashny. You can be conservative with both of them. Maybe Connor O'Sullivan could get his debut.
Would love that. Done well enough in limited VFL opportunities.
And again, Mullen could slot back in. I'm not sure whether Gary Rowan will play or if... What I would probably do, I saw this suggested, I think it would be great.
Put Rowan in for the curtain raiser?
Nah, play him as a sub.
And do you put in O'Sullivan?
I think so. I haven't watched enough of him up close, but I know that people who know more than me have thought very highly of him.
The defensive 50 ability is strong for someone of his age to already have played some senior footy at some levels is impressive there. Did that reasonably well for Albury this past year, the Ovens and Murray League.
Why do they call it Ovens and Murray League? When you ovens and Murray League, the cold food, of outs and Murray League, hot eat the food. I remembered him last year from that grand final that I watched live. That was a great grand final, the Ovens and Murray League between Albury and Stevie J's Yarrawonga Pigeons. Cats have won 11 straight head-to-head going back to 2016. I am slightly worried simply because Alistair Clarkson has a lot of history head-to-head with us, and because it's a day game, and I always feel much more confident in night games at home. But I think the logic this week is going to be, hey, we got work to do because our schedule's about to be a bitch the next 2 months. Let's take care of business here. Hopefully stomp them out early because you don't want to let an underdog hang around. The line is 56.5, which seems a bit high. What I am excited about is they've only scored 100 once in 4 games, which was the 106 against Hawthorn. I feel like this is a good chance to do that. I don't think North has held anyone beneath 100 yet. Yeah, even Freo got to 100 on them. So it was a quiet game last week for Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron. Well, Cameron did everything except kick goals. Hawkins was just held in check. I think the two of them combined for, at worst, like 7, assuming they both play the full game. Other than that, I just think this is a good opportunity where you can point at Luke Davies-Uniacke and say, hey, you see what Liva did to us last week? Let's make sure that doesn't become a trend. Let's devote our resources to stopping him. I assume Jack Henry gets the Larky assignment.
I would assume so. And when it comes to Davies-Uniacke, as I said, game on Mitch Nevitt, I would hope.
I don't think Nevitt gets in there.
I would want him to be in there just for the sake of giving some of that matchup, being able to use his size there. Hopefully this round just doesn't end with 2 duds, but there's potential.
This could be another pretty crappy Sunday.
I mean, as we have seen a lot, we end things out west, and last year was just like, oh yeah, the final game. This is the difference with AFL versus the NFL. NFL, they really make an effort into giving Sunday night good matchups when they put out the schedule to start the year. Of course, that's a primetime game for them. They don't always get there.
Yeah, we get stuck with a lot of shitty NFC East games. I do not like that the NFC East gets so much TV time because so few of the games end up delivering.
All the NFC East games needs to go to one of the North divisions.
Probably not the NFC outside of maybe Lions, Packers.
Packers Vikings always gets weird enough that it's worth it.
That's true.
And let's throw in Falcons Saints from the NFC South in there because Falcons Saints. I don't care if they're bad.
Yes, that's just a fun matchup because those teams really hate each other and those fan bases really hate each other. So I will agree on that.
It's like when Essendon and North were both down. They still threw 330% at each other. Having said that, West Coast and Richmond adopt a stadium. I know there's a good Western Tigers fan base. They travel well.
I have a really, really cold take for this. At some point after a goal, you're going to see the banner that says, you ready? Never seen this one before. Many cultures, many beliefs, one Tiger Army. I think that's probably the single sign we've seen the most in our 4+ years of doing this.
I think I know what second would have been.
What?
Catman's sign?
No, because you only see that at the end of games.
Yeah, but we've seen it at the end of a lot of games.
Yeah, but I think of signs you see like after every goal. Like honestly,
like the Hawthorn Cup, that sign. The Freo letters showing up.
The Freo letters, others.
We haven't seen like any funny misspellings of that, like Bait LA or what's the Tennessee one from that bowl game? Rocky Teps.
Was that supposed to be Rocky Top?
I still don't know. I will have to find this for you, Ethan, as we go through this one.
I know of this existing, but I don't recall it. Printing of others. Well, you know what we haven't seen them in is the Saints You Bloody Beauty sign.
Ooh, yeah. That's been a hot minute there.
That's what I really liked.
So West Coast and Richmond, 2 p.m. out west, 4 p.m. for Australian Pacific audiences. For us, 11 p.m. Saturday night for people in the East Coast and, well, as far west as Ohio, where noted Geelong fan Craig Wessels. I mean, yeah, I got
farther west than that, Indiana. Most of Indiana.
Exactly, not all of that. But I wanted to mention Craig in here because Craig.
Also, you said Ohio, ha, 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 ha.
I don't get how that's become.
I don't know either. There are a lot of dumb memes that I like.
Ohio exists.
Georgia's a funnier state. If we look at just like
Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, of course.
Georgia in particular, because of stuff like Lake Lanier and urban sprawl in the Atlanta area. And there's a lot about the Georgia area and especially Atlanta that's funny. Also, did you know Atlanta's spelled the same way forward and backwards? It's a palindrome.
So 11 p.m. for us on Saturday night, 2 a.m. Eastern, Sunday morning, 0-4 versus 1-4. And this was a double up last year. Kind of surprised it's not this year either. Could you see the Eagles winning this game? I mean, I feel like this is one of the teams, there's a world outside of North and Hawthorne that's like, it's not impossible. There is a world, but Adam Uze is a good coach. I think we'll learn which spelling of Adam is proper this game.
I mean, you could also say that when they play the Giants.
Yeah, but this is the first time we've seen ADEM versus ADAM this year. So let's go for it. Round 8 last year at the G, the Tigers had 7 straight goals from the late third quarter to the middle of the fourth to take command. And
I remember that being a pretty competitive game otherwise, though.
Like, yeah, I think the Eagles led after quarter time, was close at the half, like maybe 9 points or so in it.
It was not a game to be completely embarrassed by.
46-point win in round 8 last year. Shea Bolton and Marlon Pickett both had really complete games. And then a 38-point Tigers win out west in round 18. Richmond responded to West Coast's pressure with more pressure and took away the Eagles' opportunity to build things up slowly.
Aha, found it. It was the second meeting of 2022, round 16 at the G.
That was a competitive game.
Yeah, which I was also in Michigan for. That was the same day as that Frio Port game.
There we go. Okay.
That's what it was. Okay, now it makes sense.
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts about the Eagles list.
Give them to me.
Firstly, Ryan Merrick could be available despite breaking ribs. Is this just a trend this year where people don't miss time for broken ribs? So are we like already penciling in Scott Pendlebury to play out of the bye? He's been in training this week despite having gone to the hospital for scans, and it's the hospital. I said gone to the hospital.
I know. I know you said it. I'm making sure our listeners know it.
Clearly didn't puncture his lung then. So whether or not he's in, I would imagine Tyler Brockman slides back in. He'll be through his concussion protocol. Luke Edwards has a chance to still play despite being subbed out relatively early with his hamstring injury. I have not been impressed by him though, so I'd say sit this one out, Luke. Let's get Clay Hall in for a debut, pick 38, local, and shake things up even further. You look at the good performers in the Waffle thus far this year. Andrew Gaff has responded well enough to his demotion, but I'd be hesitant to bring him back in. But you still need to get games into players like Hall and Locke Rawlinson, who should be in the 22.
Look, Andrew Gaff is 31. Also, yeah, I liked the bits of Rawlinson we saw last week. I would like to watch more of him.
He joined Harley Reid in actually making things happen in the quarter, and I think the rest of the list could take notes from their youngest teammates. I also am just insisting, I've insisted this since round 23 last year when he was an excellent sub, that Zane True deserves another chance at the AFL level, and it has yet to happen. And after being one of the possession leaders in the reserves, I am making that call even more adamantly.
How much are you looking at this game from a standpoint of big picture versus we need to get a win because we aren't going to have that many chances to, and I feel like this could actually be one of them?
If that's the case, then I guess you might hold off on Hall and get Gaff back in. Will it be nice to get a win? Yes. And honestly, winning this game will probably help avoid any tanking investigations as well. So maybe there's something there. Here's how you can also prove you're not tanking Adam Simpson. Bringing Alex Witherden in instead of Tom Cole.
Well, I actually thought Tom Cole was not terrible against the Swans. I would have dropped him a week earlier.
The body of work through the first 4 games has not pleased me, and he's given up some dumb frees in each of them.
Yes, but the 4th game was like the least objectionable of them.
Still concerns with his kicking out of defense, and that's where Witherden can help. There needs to be something changing there. Before I knew about Merrick's injury, what I had said today responding to Eagle Nation's post, I said as follows: Witherden in for Cole, Rawlinson into the 22, Hall and True in for Edwards and Merrick, and maybe Chesser being the sub, even though I don't like it just because I would rather get a full game into Hall and True.
I mean, really, Edwards has probably been one of the weakest links, if not the weakest. On Richmond's side, Liam Baker will be back from his 1-game suspension for his rough contact on Lewis Melican,
and he went off on the Tigers' Western trip last year to play Freo. Really, that game was like all the WA natives performed super well for Richmond,
in a win that was a little bit surprising. I think it was a national TV game. Kane McAuliffe came in as a sub last week for his debut. Might have hurt his ankle, so he would be a test, I guess.
I'd put him more on the likely side.
Yeah, he was able to finish the game. Dylan Grimes could come back from his wrist injury, but he's just been bad. Maybe you've got him back in there so you can have a game to build his confidence and just be like, hey, you're not terrible.
If there is any game where you do it, you have a coughing baby defender against a coughing baby forward, which would be like Dylan Grimes against Jack Darling at this point in their careers.
If Oscar Allen's healthy, then it's a different game.
He ain't.
Yeah.
The forward structure is the biggest question for me, because even with Adam Uze saying Jacob Kaczynski will stay in, was something of which I completely approve between the goal that he kicked and his time as a second ruckman. How do you treat the game otherwise? Do you stay small or do you bring in some bigger bodies there? I'm surprised that we didn't see Samson Ryan get a go, but that clearly means Kaczynski's ahead of him. They mentioned in the mixed article that Ryan Mansell was quiet, but I think he'd done well enough in the first 4 games to warrant him staying in, and might be good to kind of keep the pressure on the Eagles when they actually do have some of their faster moments. As much as I would love for Samson Ryan and Sam Naismith to get in, I don't think this is the right game for either of them to do that, unless you're trying to manage someone else, but you've also got the bye coming up. So I think it's going to be largely unchanged, other than maybe Baker in for Dow or McAuliffe.
I want Hugo Ralph Smith.
It's not happening. There was a nice photo that they took of him and like Jack Ross kind of messing around that I saw on socials the other day. She's like, Hugo! At this point, we're going to see more of Hugo Simpson before we see Hugo Ralph Smith.
Tigers favored by 19.5.
I am actually okay with this line. Yeah. Considering the location and the questions for Richmond really in both 50s, I can see this being another competitive game the Eagles really wanting to build off last week. Hopefully, they really keep things high octane in the corridor, because that was something that I wish they had done more often against the Swans. On that note, it's time for our main character picks. And I'm going to jump right in and say Sam Powell-Pepper. First game coming back from a suspension in a matchup where I think you're going to be seeing a lot of really high pressure. He's going to come in and kick a really important goal in the fourth quarter. And I think he'll also give up a couple frees that people are going to question.
Like if they should have been frees.
One of them, if it should have been a free, the other MRO.
Sounds like a Sam Powell-Pepper game to me. I feel like this week we could get a celebrity sighting, but I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with Charlie Carnow because he's going to kick like at least 6 goals.
Wow, that was boring. Your main character picks usually are a lot more fun.
I kind of like to alternate.
Yeah, well, you whiffed on the Michael Jackson lookalike.
If that ever happens in any round, I'm calling that a win. Even if that happens like 20 seasons from now, I'm calling that a win.
Now watch that bay of seats at the GABA, the super fans there. Yes,
I'll dress up as Michael Jackson.
Okay, Ryan just made the greatest sound I have ever heard him make.
Like, I've heard him make that noise before, like talking at the ceiling.
But this wasn't talking at the ceiling. He was stretching, putting his paws against the door, wanting out, just said like,
Ryan, you want out?
It's okay, Ryan, we're almost done. Well, he's on Instagram, a cat named Brian, and I wish we had recorded that so we could have put that sound there. I am on Twitter at BenjaminHK01.
I am on Twitter at Castle Media. We are collectively at Americans Footy on a bunch of different platforms, and if you don't follow us on them,
I'll come to your house and murder you!
Was that the end of the episode? Do we have anything else? I feel like we're missing something. Like, seriously. I don't think we are, but it feels like we're missing something.
Well, there's only 8 games.
Because we've had other 8-game rounds. Well, as I leave you, I just want you to remember, beer is 90% water, but the other 10% is pure, delicious beer.